we're good to go.
Okay, thank you, and welcome to the meeting of the North Carolina State Bar Council on Friday, July the 24th. Members of the council are hereby advised of their duty under the State Government Ethics Act to avoid.
Colin, I accidentally muted you. I was trying to mute everyone else. I'm sorry.
All right.
I did it again. All right.
All right. Good morning. Welcome to the meeting of the North Carolina State Bar Council on Friday, July the 24th. Members of the council are hereby advised of their duty under the State Government Ethics Act to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflict, and are instructed to refrain from participating in any matter coming before the council with respect to which there's a conflict of interest or the appearance of conflict. Does anyone have any that they would like to put on record at this point? If not, if the occasion arises, just let us know during the meeting and we'll acknowledge that. I also would like to acknowledge some recent correspondence from the State Ethics Board. We received some correspondence from the Ethics Board acknowledging receipt of the statements of economic interest of a counselor. The name of the counselor, as required by the Elections and Ethics Enforcement Act, will be noted in the minutes of the meeting. Darren, are you lead us in an invocation?
Yes, sir. I will. You'll bow your heads. Lord, I worry because I forget your wisdom. I resent because I forget your mercy. I covet because I forget your beauty. I sin because I forget your holiness. I fear because I forget your sovereignty. You always remember me. Help me to always remember you. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you. We are privileged this morning to have with us the Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court, Justice Sherry Beasley. Justice Beasley, would you give us some remarks, your thoughts today?
Thank you, Colin. To all of the officers and bar counselors, to Alice, it is truly a pleasure to be here with you all this morning. I'm sorry that we're not able to meet in person, but I'm certainly very thankful that we have the opportunity to come together virtually. And I am sincerely delighted to see you all here today. This is truly an unprecedented time we find ourselves in, and this pandemic has certainly presented a host of challenges that none of us ever expected to face. But it's also presented opportunities for us to improve our legal system. I hope that you all have been impressed with the way that our judges have served with tenacity and resilience, and all the personnel, clerks, attorneys, district attorneys who make up our state court system. Everyone has worked really hard to keep the system running, and everyone has risen to the challenge, working around the clock to prepare courtrooms for social distancing and continuing the work of our courts, even often, frankly, with reduced staff. As you know, I've entered a number of emergency directives to guide our court system through this pandemic. By law, each emergency directive expires 30 days after it's issued and must either be renewed or allowed to expire every month. All of the orders may be found at nccourts.gov/COVID-19. As well as answers to frequently asked questions. You can also find all the local administrative orders and local information for each county on that website. The safety of court personnel and members of the bar and the public really has been my #1 priority. I'm sorry to tell you that there have been more than 70 court facilities closed temporarily at some point. And more than 70 court personnel have contracted COVID-19. And unfortunately, we're unlikely to see a need not to continue to observing social distancing in our courts, wearing face coverings in court, and limited court dockets for quite some time, especially as the numbers of COVID-19 diagnoses continue to increase. Last week, I announced that jury trials will continue to be postponed through the end of September. All senior resident Superior Court judges have been directed to put together comprehensive plans for resuming jury trials safely in each district. These plans must be approved by local court officials, public health directors, and sheriffs. And once approved, they will be submitted to the Administrative Office of the Courts for publication on nccourts.gov website and then promulgated by local rule. Over the last 2 months, I've held virtual bar meetings with every bar district across the state to explain the emergency directives and answer questions. I sincerely appreciate everyone who took the time to promote and to host and attend these luncheons, and I hope that your local bar members found them to be helpful and informative. There are a few things that you can do to help us. Please make sure that your local bars stay informed about changes to court operations and that they are aware that our online services, they can check court dates. Their clients can sign up for text or email reminders about court dates. They can pay speeding tickets and request a reduction or dismissal in many locations. And for all of those services, you may go to nccourts.gov/services. I think it's also important for us to focus on attorney and judge mental health. We're all facing challenges personally and professionally like never before. Many of the members of the bar have had family members or friends or members of their community who've fallen ill, children at home who are learning virtually, financial difficulties, and not to mention the isolation and anxiety and heightened pressure that we're all experiencing around the impact of COVID-19 on our lives and in our communities. And so I certainly appreciate the officer of the State Bar who took the time yesterday to meet jointly with officers of the Bar Association and me to discuss this very important issue. I'm grateful for their commitment to ensuring that any member of the profession who is having a difficult time knows that there are resources available to help them. I'm sure that you'll be hearing more about these efforts and how you can help to bring those resources to those in your local communities in the next coming weeks. I'd also like to share with you that we've recently launched the Faith and Justice Alliance, which has really allowed us to meet with clergy and places of worship who have been able to help to identify unmet civil legal needs. It's been exciting to see that these places of worship are also excited about hosting legal clinics, even virtually. And it's also been exciting to see lawyers who are excited about using their mission in their faith to provide pro bono services. And we certainly could not have predicted that at this time, as we've launched the Faith and Justice Alliance, that there would be this intersection of faith and justice and law during this time of really critical need in our communities. If you would like more information about the Faith and Justice Alliance or know of a clergy person, place of worship, or a lawyer who might be interested in being a part of this really wonderful initiative, please go to ncfaithandjusticealliance.org. I'd also like to tell you all that I'm very grateful to the State Bar for your support in facilitating communications between the State Bar members and me to keep everyone abreast of updates on the impact of the pandemic on our courts. I'm very grateful for your service and very much appreciate all you do. Thanks so much for having me here today, and best wishes for a great meeting.
Thank you, Chief. We really appreciate that. We appreciate you coming and sharing with us your insights, and we appreciate your leadership during this difficult time. We share your concerns about the pro bono, and we share your concerns about the mental health of lawyers. We know we are our brother's keeper, and so we greatly appreciate your taking the leadership on that. Thank you.
Thank you
all. We have with us also this morning Mark Holt, the president of the North Carolina Bar Association. Mark, have you got some thoughts from the Bar Association you could bring?
I do. Thank you very much, Colin. I greatly appreciate the kind invitation to report to you today on behalf of the North Carolina Bar Association. Like you and like the State Bar, we are working diligently to carry out our mission under the circumstances we find ourselves in right now. And consistent with that, I want to report to you that we held our first ever virtual annual meeting of the North Carolina Bar Association on June 26th. Our meeting was webcast to our members across the state with limited in-person attendance at the Bar Center in Cary. Our then president and now immediate past president, Leanne Neese-Brown, presided. We elected new members of our Board of Governors. John Howell of Charlotte was elected our new president-elect. And we were very honored to have Chief Justice Sherry Beasley attend to conduct my installation from a social distance and to deliver her annual State of the Judiciary address, which was broadcast during our meeting. John, Leanne, and our executive director, Jason Hensley, and I appreciate the opportunity to provide you with these updates and to stay in close communication. And we're grateful for your reports to us at our meetings and in between. As our state's voluntary bar association and organization, we feel a deep responsibility to support the legal community of our state at all times, and particularly during our current challenges. Like you, we know that our state needs a strong community of legal professionals working together to meet the legal needs of the people of our state. And I want to let you know that we're continuing to do all we can to build community and provide a welcoming home for all the members of our state's legal community, and to support and equip attorneys with resources they need to deliver legal services to those depending on them, even as many of those attorneys also are facing difficult circumstances. And we're trying to do our part to support our judges and attorneys working on the front line in our courts, as the Chief Justice described this morning. We have done this during COVID-19 through our Center for Practice Management, which provides technology support and consultations with lawyers and law firms. In addition, we've provided webinars, blogs, and virtual gatherings of lawyers and judges to discuss various topics. Some examples include the CARES Act, how to conduct video depositions, employment issues. We've gathered judges and lawyers virtually to discuss protocols and logistics for virtual court hearings. Our Young Lawyers Division sponsored a virtual wellness competition, and our membership department sponsored a series of Wellness Wednesday online sessions, which are now maintained with other wellness resources on our website for those suffering during COVID-19, as the Chief Justice mentioned this morning. We have virtual member gatherings, and our CLE offerings have been converted to on-demand and webcast formats. Our sections, divisions, committees, and boards continue to carry out their vital functions remotely and through virtual meetings. So needless to say, we are grateful for technology. It allows us as the voluntary bar organization to continue to bring lawyers and judges together in fellowship and in pursuit of the work to better our profession and to help us serve legal needs. And it allows us to continue to offer CLE, including Expert Series CLE that we provide each month as part of membership. And on July 1st, as we began our new bar year, we launched enhanced technology to keep our members better connected with their membership resources and with each other. And our technology upgrades included a new website and new technology platforms for participation in CLE, as well as membership renewals, which are ongoing right now. The last thing I want to describe for you, it relates to our North Carolina Bar Foundation. This year marks the 60th anniversary of the North Carolina Bar Foundation. And it never in our foundation's history has there been a greater need for the unique talents and services that lawyers can provide the people of our state who are suffering. And I'm very proud to report that the North Carolina Bar Foundation, along with other legal services organizations, are stepping up to serve. Our foundation has held a series of COVID-19 virtual legal hotlines across the state, in which attorney volunteers provide free legal information to callers who are screened by volunteer paralegals and law students. All of this is done through an app and a website, with volunteers participating from their homes and offices and callers utilizing a number that's promoted on local television and social media. And thus far, we've conducted these virtual hotlines for the Triangle, the Triad, Western North Carolina, and the Charlotte area, and we hope to do others. In addition, we offer NC free legal answers, where our volunteer attorneys provide online free legal advice to low-income North Carolinians through a website promoted across the state. During COVID-19, so far, over 3,500 individuals living in over 70 North Carolina counties have received free legal services through these web-based resources. And we're glad to continue to allow lawyers to volunteer and serve those in need, even when we can't be in person. In addition, we're sponsoring a frontline health planning project with the North Carolina Pro Bono Resource Center, which will provide advanced directives to healthcare workers and essential employees. And we're also sponsoring an eviction assistance program in partnership with Legal Aid of North Carolina, serving those facing eviction in the wake of COVID-19. And on March 6th, just before stay-at-home orders began, we held our For All statewide day of service, where we had over 400 volunteer attorneys providing legal information to over 8,700 callers. So I thank you. As the state's voluntary bar, we are grateful for these opportunities to support our professionals, legal professionals across the state in their work on behalf of others. And I just want to let all of you know how grateful we are for your dedicated work as a state bar. And I thank you again for letting me bring this update from the Bar Association this morning.
Thanks, Mark. We really appreciate you being with us this morning and your message. And we appreciate so much what you and Leanne and John and Jason are doing every day, and the whole Bar Association, and the things that you do to better the profession and to serve the legal needs, especially those of people who otherwise wouldn't have access to justice. But on behalf of the State Bar, thank you. We appreciate what you do, and we appreciate how you help us. We're eternally grateful.
Thank you, Colin. We're grateful too.
We do have recognition of a new counselor. We have our newest counselor is Patty Head from downtown Littleton. We are so delighted to have Patty with us. Patty, we've been friends for a long time through the community and church, and have served together. We're so appreciative of you coming back. For those of you that don't know, Patty is kind of the quintessential public servant in Wake County. She served as the chairman of our public school system here and navigated us through some difficult times. She and I served together on the Disciplinary Hearing Commission years ago. We enjoyed that. And she is back now for her second tour. She has served a previous tour with us as a public member. We are delighted that you agreed to serve again, and thank you for being here, Patty. We really appreciate your service.
Colin, thank you. I'm honored to have been asked to serve again. I know so many of the counselors and people who are working on these important committees through years of being with the bar, of course, through Alan, and then on my own and doing some things with the state bar. And I'm just honored to be a part of such a distinguished group of people who care about the community, care about the legal profession, and most of all are just nice people. So thank you again for welcoming me, and I look forward to doing whatever I can do to enhance the North Carolina State Bar.
Thank you. Thanks, Patty. We're glad to have you. Last night, some of you were able to be present. We had a little reception, and we had a resolution of appreciation for Rude Edmiston and his 41 years of service with the State Bar. We've been honored, and we had a grand time. And Tom Lunsford read the resolution last night. I couldn't do justice to Tom's reading. I'm not going to do that, but it is there in your packet. I would ask for a motion to adopt this resolution of appreciation to Rude Edmiston.
So moved.
Been moved in second.
Second.
Anyone have anything that they would like to say? If not, all those in favor, let it be known by voting yes on the screen, or or by your verbal yes?
We're at unanimous, over 50.
By acclamation. We'll pass this resolution by acclamation, and it will be part of the permanent records of the North Carolina State Bar. And our eternal thanks and gratefulness to Root for all of his wonderful service. Thank you, Root. We're delighted to have you with us. We do have two tenders of surrender of license, I think, that are up next. Catherine, do you have one?
Okay. I think we're at cross purposes with the unmuting. You have in your materials the affidavit of surrender of law license of Daniel Matthias Kincheloe. Mr. Kincheloe, who was also licensed in Virginia, acknowledges in the affidavit that he pled guilty in the United States District Court for the Western District of Virginia to the felony offense of transmission of interstate communications with intent to extort in violation of 18 U.S.C. 875. Mr. Kincheloe has been disbarred in Virginia. I have reviewed the affidavit and find it to be in proper form and compliant with the requirements of the State Bar discipline and disability rules. I ask the council to accept the affidavit and to enter an order disbarring Mr. Kincheloe and taxing the costs and the administrative fees to Mr. Kincheloe.
Thank you. Do I have a motion that we accept the tender of the surrender of license of Daniel Kincheloe?
So moved.
Thank you, Julia.
Second.
The motion, is there a second?
Second.
Dorothy. Any further discussion? If not, those in favor of accepting the surrender, please let it be known by voting yes on the screen, and those opposed, no.
$55-0.
All right, thank you. We have a second.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a second tender of surrender from, I think Pat Murphy was handling this one. Pat hooked up. If he's not, we can come back to it later, or we'll deal with it. That's fine. Why don't we?
Can you hear me now?
That's for now, I think. Okay.
Oh, okay. All right.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Yes, Mr. President and members of the council, you have in your packets the affidavit of tender of surrender of the law license of John Iverson. Mr. Iverson pleaded guilty in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania of conspiring to defraud the IRS and one count of tax evasion. Judgment was entered in June of 2017. He is currently housed in the Federal Correctional Institute in White Deer, Pennsylvania. I've examined the affidavit. It comports with the requirements of the rules. Accordingly, I recommend that the North Carolina State Bar Council accept Mr. Iverson's resignation in order that he be disbarred and taxed with the costs of this proceeding.
Thank you, Pat. Is there a motion that we accept the tender of surrender of the license of John Iverson case?
So move.
All right, Ted, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion before we vote? If not, those in favor of the acceptance of the tender of surrender, please vote yes, and those opposed, no.
$50-0.
All right, thanks. That passes. We move to the executive committee report. Do we start with the financial statements on Barbara, or the minutes of the previous? Do we need to approve the minutes of the previous council meeting? Or not, I guess not. We just, I guess the financial statements. Sorry
Colin,
for being-
yeah,
Pardon?
Colin, we do need the minutes approved.
Okay. We've had the minutes posted of the previous council meeting in April on EDDS. Folks have had an opportunity to look at them. Does anyone have anything they think should be corrected or changed in those minutes? If not, is there a motion that we accept those as an accurate copy of the minutes?
So moved.
Move to accept the
The
minutes.
motion is in second.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, those in favor of acceptance of the minutes of as reported, let it be known by voting yes on the screen, and those opposed, no.
Unanimous.
Okay. Now, Barbara, talk with us about the financial statements.
Thank you, Colin. Good morning, everybody. Finance and Audit Committee Subcommittee met last week, and we reviewed and approved the financial statements for the second quarter. They were posted for your review in EDDS, and it is our motion that those be approved.
All right. The motion of the Finance and Audit Committee doesn't need a second. Is there any further discussion before we vote? If not, those in favor of acceptance of the financial statements as presented, please vote yes on your screen, and those opposed, no.
Unanimous.
Thank you, sir. Barbara,
Another item of business was the selection of auditors to do the state bar audit, and it is our recommendation that we engage Bernard Robinson and Company. They are incumbent auditors, and we approve the form of engagement letter, and it is our motion that they be engaged for this purpose.
okay. Motion of the Finance Committee doesn't need a second. Is there any further discussion before we vote? If not, those in favor of the selection of Bernard Robinson as our auditors for the year, this coming year, please let me know by voting yes on the screen, and those opposed, no.
Unanimous.
Good. Thank you, sir.
Okay, and finally, the final matter before Finance and Audit was the approval of some changes to the State Bar's personnel policy to bring them in line with the Federal Families First Coronavirus Relief Act that extended emergency leave in certain cases. And so it is the recommendation and motion of Finance and Audit that these changes be approved.
Okay. Thank you. The motion of Finance and Audit doesn't need a second. Is any further discussion before we vote? If not, those in favor of the motion, let it be known by voting yes on the screen, and those opposed, no.
Unanimous.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Barbara. The Appointments Advisory Committee.
Okay. Appointments Advisory met, and our first item was the appointment of 3 members to the Board of Legal Specialization. Laura Hudson, Nancy Ray, and Jan Pritchett are all eligible for reappointment, and it is the motion of the Appointments Advisory Committee that they be reappointed.
Okay. Motion made and doesn't need a second. Is there any further discussion before we vote? If not, those in favor of motion for the appointment of Laura Hudson, Nancy Ray, and Jan Pritchett, please let it be known by voting yes, and those opposed, no.
Unanimous.
Thank you, sir.
It is further the motion of Appointments Advisory that Larry Rockamora be appointed Chair of Legal Specialization and Kim Coward be appointed Vice Chair.
Thank you. Motion made and doesn't need a second. Is there any discussion before we vote? If not, those in favor of the motion that Larry Rockamora be appointed chair and Kimberly Coward be appointed vice chair, let it be known by voting yes, and those opposed, no.
Unanimous.
Thanks, sir.
There are 3 appointments to be made to the IOLTA Board of Trustees, and it is the motion of the Appointments Advisory Committee that Anita Brown Graham be reappointed and that Judge John Arrowood and John Keene be appointed.
Thank you. Motion of Finance doesn't need a second. Is there any discussion before we vote? If not, those in favor of the motion for Anita Brown Graham, John Arrowood, and John Keene, let it be known by voting yes. And those opposed, no.
Unanimous.
Thanks, sir.
And finally, it is the motion of the Appointments Advisory Committee that Maria Nasi be appointed as chair and Judge Jane Harper be appointed as vice chair of the
Thank you.
IOLTA Board.
Thank you. The motion of Finance Committee doesn't need a second. Those in favor of, or is there any discussion before we vote? If not, those in favor of the motion for Maria Messé to be named chair of the board and Jane Harper to be vice chair, please let it be known by voting yes, and those opposed, no.
Unanimous.
Thank you. There was one additional note that it was not a matter for action on the committee, but we did have discussion of the reappointment to the Dispute Resolution Commission of Charlotte Wood, and that was a presidential appointment, and she was reappointed. We have some amendments that are proposed for publication. The first is, should this be coming from another committee, or should this be coming from me, Alice? Would that be?
So the executive committee accepted the recommendations of other committees, and so this is the motion of the executive
Committee. All right. So the first one is the proposed amendments to the rules governing student law practice and pro bono activities that have been worked on for a long time. We've gotten a good product, we believe, from input from the law schools and lawyers, and the executive committee would recommend that those amendments to the rules be published. Is there any discussion before we vote? Those in favor of publishing those rules, please let it be known by voting yes on the machine, and those opposed, no.
Unanimous.
Thanks. We also have some rules govern the rules of amendments to the rules of advertising. That again has been a long and difficult task. I think they've gone through this very carefully. David, Barbara, and a number of folks on that committee that have worked very hard. We are pleased that we've been able to bring the rules into conformity, we believe, with the modern rulings and case law and guidance from some federal agencies. We would move those to be published for comment. Is there all those in favor of publishing for comment the rules, the amendments to the rules of advertising? Please let it be known by voting yes, and those opposed, no.
Unanimous.
Thank you. We also had rules, other rules that we were seeking to publish were amendments to Rule 1.5 regarding the fees for professional conduct, regarding changing fees for discipline allegations, and those have been, I think, gone through the committee and through the recommendation of the executive committee is to publish those for comment. Is there any discussion before we vote? And if not, those in favor of publishing the rules of the amendments to Rule 1.5, please let it be known by voting yes, and those opposed, no.
Unanimous.
Yesterday we had ethics committee went through and had made a recommendation to the executive committee that we had a proposed amendment to the preamble of the rules of professional responsibility that has been available to you there. I think that was broad acceptance of that from both the ethics committee and the executive committee. Is there anyone that has any items for discussion about that before we vote? If not, those in favor of publishing the amendments to the preamble of the rules of professional conduct, please let it be known by voting yes, and those opposed, no.
Unanimous.
Thanks, sir. We had the proposed amendments to the rules of prepaid legal services plan that had been published, and I think we had received some a few comments had been further reviewed, and this comes from the executive committee as recommend that the council send these to the Supreme Court for their review and acceptance. Any discussion? If not, those in favor of sending these to the Supreme Court, please let it be known by voting yes, and those opposed, no.
Unanimous.
The next matter was there were some proposed amendments that were published after the April quarterly meeting involving the reinstatement from inactive status and administrative suspension. Those have been published. We are recommended that they be sent to the Supreme Court for their approval for each of these. If there's no reason to deal with them separately, for the rules on inactive status and administrative suspension, for the amendments to the changing the standards of certification for immigration law, the amendments for the rules governing the admission to practice, and proposed amendments on the rules for annual membership fees, and the proposed amendments for the rules of discipline and disability. Does anyone have any question about those? A recommendation of executive committee is to send all of those to the Supreme Court for their review and acceptance. If not, those in favor of sending those 5 different items to the Supreme Court for their review, please let it be known by voting yes, and those opposed, no.
Unanimous.
Thank you, sir. The next matter was the extension of the Transitioning Lawyers Commission, TLC. If you remember, we were in our last meeting, we extended that date for about a week or so until July the 25th, which is tomorrow. The recommendation that came from through LAP and the request from the Bar Association was that we extend this for just a little over 2 years until July the 31st of 2022. It is the recommendation of the executive committee that that term of the TLC be extended for slightly more than 2 years. Is there any discussion? If not, those in favor, please let it be known by saying aye. Or by voting yes on the voting yes on the machine, and those opposed, no.
Unanimous.
So I was trying to.
I think we might have had a colon freeze here. Alice, should Barbara take over?
That's what I'm. Is there?
We're back now. Okay. I think we got the colon.
All right. You have to do that 25th Amendment, and when I have somebody take over for me. Oh, it probably could have been done months ago. There was one additional thing that I wanted to bring to the council's attention, and it involves the administration of the bar examination next week. The officers, some of you counselors, some of the state bar staff have been receiving communications from applicants for the 2020 bar examination and from lawyers representing them about the administration of the examination. Those communications have been from represented various different points of view about what should and shouldn't happen. They've made a variety of requests, including requests that the state bar adopt a rule requiring the bar exam be administered remotely. You have in your packet of information that was provided to you this morning a copy of the General Statute 8424 that deals with this very issue. And in that, it makes it clear that the Board of Law Examiners has the authority to decide how and when the bar examination is administered. And it has been my practice and my intention to explain to those who make those requests that those requests should be made to the Board of Law Examiners, not to the state bar. And I don't know that there's any reason for an action item, but I just felt like it was necessary that we needed to let folks know that we have received this information and that based on our clear reading of the statute that we don't think that this is within our authority, that it's the authority of another state agency. See, the administrative committee, Everett.
All right, good morning, everyone. Everett Thompson here. We had our administrative committee meeting on Monday, July the 20th. There's a full report of what we did on page 41, starts on page 41 of your agenda. I'll just give you the summary here so we can move along. We had 52 lawyers were granted inactive status. And of those, 12 were granted upon satisfying requirements, which they hadn't done yet, but they will by October, we think. And 3 were granted non-pro-tunc effective as of the end of December 2019, so they didn't have to pay any 2020 dues. We had 1 lawyer for an emeritus pro bono petition and inactive status at the same time, and that was granted. Of course, 13 lawyers were reinstated from inactive status because they had complied with all the requirements. We had 2 lawyers who were granted reinstatement who had been suspended previously, and they had complied. And we had 1 lawyer who had requested reinstatement, but that was deferred to the October meeting. What you'll have on page 45 of the agenda is the listing of lawyers who would be issued a suspension order or a notice to show cause. And all of the notices to show cause come out of Judicial District 31 for Forsyth County. You don't see any of the other ones because the dues have been extended to the end of August for the membership of the state bar, and we may deal with that issue in October. But what you'll see is those listings there. What we need to do, the committee did vote to recommend that the council grant the request to issue 89 notices to show cause and 1 suspension order to those lawyers listed in that attached list, which I think, Mr. President, we would need to vote on that.
Okay, is that the only item for action ever?
No, there's one other item.
Do you want us to deal with that now, or?
Yeah, I think with just one more, and then we could vote on that one to have those notices and suspension orders issued. And I'll mention something after we vote on that.
All right. That motion from the,
Colin?
yes, ma'am. Yes.
Usually we just vote on the whole report of the administrative committee, and that makes
Okay.
sure that we've covered all of the items.
Okay.
It's just usually an easier way to deal with it, and make
All
sure
right.
anything.
Thank you, Alice, for moving me along here. The committee also voted to recommend that the council grant the proposed bylaw amendments for Judicial District 24H. H is in hotel. So those are two recommendations to the state, to the Bar Council for vote.
Okay. That's coming from the administrative committee. It doesn't need a second. Is there any discussion before we vote? If not, those in favor of those two motions of the administrative committee, please vote yes, and those opposed, no.
That passes 54-1.
I did want to mention that you can look at that list, and those lawyers who are going to get a notice or suspension order, if you know them or can call them and get them to pay what they need to pay, because it's all for the mainly for Judicial District 31. So if you can do that, that would save other people some problems. So anyway, and there's an executive assistant at the Judicial District there her name is Karen Willard, and you could contact her also if you need to do that. But anyway, that's my report.
Colin, can I suggest that we have a motion to approve the entire report, just so we can accurately reflect that in the minutes, make sure we got all the items on the administrative committee agenda?
I don't think that's out of order. I think that, yes, sure, absolutely. Is there a motion that we approve the report of the administrative committee?
I move we approve the report of the administrative committee.
Move is second.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion before we vote? If not, all those in favor of approval of the report of the administrative committee, please let it be known by voting yes, and those opposed, no.
Thank you.
Unanimous.
Thank you, Everett. Authorized practice, Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. President. The Authorized Practice Committee met on July 15. The minutes are in the packet posted to EDDS. The committee reviewed 24 complaints and inquiries for action. The committee issued letters of caution in 15 matters. The committee dismissed 4 matters. The AP committee closed the files with no action in 2 matters. The committee continued 3 matters. The staff registered amendments to 51 existing prepaid legal services plans. The staff reviewed 5 prepaid plans for initial registration. 3 plans were registered, 1 plan is pending, and 1 plan was rejected. And as previously noted as part of the executive committee report, we recommended that the executive committee, and now the council has approved the amendments to the rules governing the registration of prepaid legal services plans. And then there was one other matter that we discussed yesterday, Colin, at the executive committee meeting, and I think it probably does need a vote of the full council, so I'll bring it up now, which is the Authorized Practice Committee voted to request the council enter an order revoking the registration of General Parts, Inc. The plan owner indicated in November that this prepaid legal services plan is no longer being used in North Carolina. So upon approval, an order signed by Alice Mine will be issued indicating as such.
Okay. We have a motion from the Authorized Practice Committee for a revocation of General Parts Inc.'s prepaid legal services plan. It doesn't need a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, those in favor of the motion, please vote yes, and those opposed, no.
Unanimous.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think that concludes the report of the Authorized Practice Committee.
Thanks, Kevin. Communications, Heidi?
Hey, thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, everybody. This is Heidi. It is good to see everyone, especially since I could only participate by phone in yesterday's meetings and shenanigans, because thanks to the late Bob Detweiler, I was in Onslow County and somewhere on Route 24 when you all were meeting. But in any event, the Communications Committee, we met, which was better than we were able to do in April. We met on July 15th. And since we haven't had a meeting since January, and I think I wasn't present at the full council meeting, this is the first opportunity I'm having to share a little bit with you what the committee is working on. Obviously, before COVID, or BC as Peter called it, I had sort of mapped out a strategy, or really maybe more aspirations, to let stakeholders, whether it's attorneys, the public, law students, et cetera, sort of know what goes on behind the beautiful walls of our building, and to let everyone know about the people that were inside the building. That's you guys, the staff council, and about the good work and hard work that we do. Obviously, COVID required us to pivot on that a little bit, and instead it became sort of the task of primarily Peter and Brian and those who work with them, who deserve a big shout out, to help publicize, whether it was the mandates and the directives of the Chief Justice, or information from the AOC, or even whatever our professional responsibilities were during a pandemic. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I never thought I'd be saying those words. They have done an amazing job, and I'm so grateful for all that they did. One big advancement we've made is what we're doing right now, which is live streaming of all of these meetings. And we're doing that on YouTube, whereas previously our only platform had been Facebook. So that's a pretty significant change, and frankly, an upgrade. Some other things we've gotten done was the preparation of the annual report. I didn't actually see it in the materials, but certainly if you all would like to see it, we can make that available to you. And I think we're still working a little bit on revamping our database. So as far as what I'm hoping for the rest of the year is obviously continuing to be sort of a mouthpiece for what's going on with the bar, and continuing rules and regulations as they're put out every day. Things change. Obviously, Twitter is all afire with the news of our proposed nominee for vice president. So that's exciting. And the other thing that we're doing is sort of through a working group that's being headed by Mark Henriquez. We are working on putting together some podcasts, with the goal being, I'm hoping 2 between now and the next meeting. And we're trying to work sort of in coordination and synergy with the Publications Committee, so that we can highlight the issues and complement the articles that are being published through that committee. So I'm excited about those podcasts. I hope that you all will tune in when they're done. I don't believe we have any action items for the council, and so that is the report of the Communications Committee.
Thank you, Heidi. We appreciate how much the Communications Committee does, and we realize how vital it is, particularly in this time, to be able to get our message out. And y'all have adapted well. Thank you for what you and the committee have done. Appreciate it. Ethics, David.
Thank you, Mr. President. For those of you who remember, ethics was a model of efficiency in both October and January, finishing in record time and putting grievance to shame. As a result of that, we took spring break in April. And as often happens, once you've gone on vacation, there is a heck to pay when you get back. And we had a very busy agenda yesterday. Before we move to that, though, I do want to say that even in, as Heidi referred to it, even in the COVID times, some things don't change, and that part of that is the work of the staff. And we continue to do audits, and in this vein of some things never changing, the same issues that we always see with audits continued, and reconciliations and failures to really attend to trust account issues continue to dog us. And I always ask that you highlight those. It never seems to make those numbers never seem to change. The audit report always seems to be that those are our two major areas of concern. Staff also continued to handle a number of ethics inquiries where people have phoned in to the ethics hotline. That did not drop off. We handled about the same number that we normally handle, which is about 350 calls a month. Even I can do that kind of math, which means that that's more than one a day, every day, every month, every day, every month. And so those are really handled very nicely. Nicole, really, and Suzanne handle those and provide a great service to the membership. And that continued even during the time that we were all in hibernation. And ethics presentations by our staff continued. We had 9 presentations, Brian doing most of those, but staff continues to be available to provide CLE to local meetings where CLE is needed. With respect to our agenda yesterday, we did have a very full agenda. There are 3 matters, Mr. President, for that the Ethics Committee has recommended for publication. Those are listed in the report, which is attached to the agenda. One is on advancing client portion of settlements. One is on the lawyer as the witness and the solo practice context. And the other is on investment in litigation financing. And it is the request of the Ethics Committee that those be published. And that would be our recommendation to the council.
Thank you, David. A motion from the Ethics Committee that we publish those 3 matters. Is there any further discussion before we vote? If not, those in favor of publishing those 3 items, let it be known by voting yes, and those opposed, no.
I think Peter just said that was, I think that was okay. He was muted. He muted himself for once,
That was
but I think that worked. One other thing that happened during the hiatus was that Brian published on the website an ethics advisory that gave some direction, particularly in the real estate context, to folks on how to deal with recordation, notarization, and those kind of things. That's up on the website. That was officially adopted by the Ethics Committee yesterday, but it's some guidance for particularly, as I say, in the real estate context. And if you have members in your districts that have not really accessed that, it really does provide some very good guidance, and I would recommend that to you. The other matter that occupied most of our time yesterday was a number of rule changes, and the Ethics Committee appreciates the council's endorsement of 2 of those, the preamble change and the matter on misconduct for a lawyer to charge for responding to grievances or other administrative sanctions that were handled in the Executive Committee. I just note for the council that there were 2 other matters that rule changes that were sent to subcommittee for study. One is on ABA Model 8.4G, and the other is on an amendment to Rule 1 on professional competence. Both of those are issues that were discussed in the special Ethics Committee meeting that was held on June 26th. And I thank the council and the officers for allowing us to have that extra meeting on the 26th to highlight issues for folks that were going to be in front of the Ethics Committee. There's been a lot of interest in those issues surrounding non-discrimination and social justice. 2 of those, the preamble is one piece of that. The other 2 pieces of that have now been sent to subcommittee for review. If you have interest in those, please follow along on the State Bar website, because the timing of those meetings and notices of those meetings will be posted on the website as we move into the fall. So that's just an alert that those matters are moving through the system. And there's been a good bit of interest in those. Thought I should highlight those, Mr. President, for those who want to follow. I believe that's the report of the Ethics Committee, and we appreciate y'all's attendance at both the special meeting and the meeting yesterday.
Thank you, David. We appreciate the work that y'all have done, especially having an extra meeting in advance to give folks plenty of time to review some of these things, and the work that the committee has done to improve the preamble and to try to constantly look at our rules and keep us where we as a profession want to be. And we especially appreciate your leadership and the work of the committee. It's heavy lifting, and y'all are doing great work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Todd, grievance.
Second, I just want to take a moment to again publicly acknowledge and to thank the Grievance Committee, counselors, and especially the bar staff for the outstanding work that they do that enables us to achieve our mission of protecting the public. This quarter, the committee considered 179 matters, and I will give you a brief breakdown. The report is in the materials. Subcommittee 1 this quarter considered 25 separate matters. 6 of those were dismissed. 5 were dismissed with letters of warning. 4 were sent to the Trust Accounting Compliance Program. 8 files were sent to the Disciplinary Hearing Commission. 1 file, after being reconsidered, was also sent to the DHC, and 1 file had a reprimand. Subcommittee 2 handled 23 items. 2 of those were dismissed with letters of caution. 3 were dismissed with letters of warning. 11 were sent to the DHC. 1 file had a censure issued. 2 files had 1 reprimand issued, both files being handled by the same lawyer. And then 4 files were issued admonitions. Subcommittee 3 handled 20 items. 1 was dismissed. 3 had dismissals with letters of caution. 2 were dismissed with letters of warning. Another one had a straight dismissal in preliminary, or dismissal with a letter of warning in preliminary hearing. 1 file was sent to the Trust Accounting Compliance Program. 6 files were referred to the DHC. 1 had a reprimand issued, and 5 files had admonition issued. That is the report of grievance for this quarter. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Todd. Y'all continue to do the heavy lifting through these difficult times. We appreciate that, and the work of the Grievance Committee, and especially you. I know that the work of being chairman is a huge job, and we thank you for that.
Thank you.
Our Vice President, Darren Jordan, talk to us about Issues Committee.
Yeah, the Issues Committee met this week, and we are continuing to look at 3 major issues that President Willoughby has asked us to review. Mark Enriquez is the chair of the subcommittee looking at regulatory changes. I would commend to the council to take a look at the Issues Committee materials in EDDS. Brian Oaten did a fabulous job of preparing a PowerPoint that was presented to that subcommittee that sort of outlines all the things that are happening in the United States with regards to regulatory changes and possible changes on the horizon, not just for the other jurisdictions, but possibly for us. And of course, we're looking at those to determine whether or not those changes are a good fit for North Carolina or not. I think we're surprisingly finding, at least in a couple of areas where things look like they were great ideas and turned out not to be such good ideas once they were implemented. So we have a good committee that's really digging down deep into those issues. And I think that hopefully in the coming months, we may have at least some partial reports from that committee indicating what, some of the things that they're recommending. I think that subcommittee is meeting on Monday, and they have a nationally known speaker to speak to one of those regulatory items. The other two committees, one is chaired by Judge Cobb, has to do with indigent defense services and the compensation of attorneys who do indigent defense work. And at this point in time, they had an excellent presentation by Whitney Fairbanks, who is the interim director of the Indigent Defense Services of North Carolina, giving them an overview of what kind of vehicles North Carolina utilizes to provide indigent defense representation. So they continue to do work, and the final committee is one that is chaired by our own Gray Willardson, and they are looking at proportional discovery, and Carmen Bannon did a great job of putting together a chart with regards to analyzing what Rule 26 under the federal rules of civil procedure and how it compares to Rule 26 of the North Carolina rules of civil procedure, to see if there is something that we might get together with maybe some of the other associations like the Bar Association, NCAJ, to come forward and make a recommendation to the powers that be about changing our rules of civil procedure to reflect some idea of proportional discovery. And I'll leave it to our guru, Gray Willardson, who I mentioned yesterday can't even make the rules of civil procedure interesting to me, to describe to you over a cup of liquor or something like that what Rule 26 says if you don't know. So that's our report.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. There's some interesting things y'all are working on that's really good. We have Brady Vickery with the LAMP Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. The legal assistance for military personnel the committee met on June 24th. This year, we welcomed new members. Of course, the governor's recent appointment, Patty Head, is now on the LAMP committee. We appreciated that. Thank you, Mr. President, for making that appointment to our committee. We also, since our meeting, have gotten a new member from to the board. It's Ellie Morales. She is at Wake Forest School of Law. She's the director of the Veterans Legal Clinic there at Wake Forest. So we're excited about that. The Major Commands were represented there. We had Major Command representatives participating in this meeting. We had Zoom meeting at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, Fort Bragg, Camp Lejeune, and the National Guard. Hopefully, we're going to continue with our CLE program. Right now, it's been put on hold, and hopefully, we're hoping that March of 2021 we'll be able to do another one of those. Again, as I always do, I like to remind everybody to check out our website, nclamp.gov. We've done a number of things, taken some steps to assure that we have keep this information updated, and we're utilizing some of our contacts now with the law school volunteers that'll be supervised, of course, by the professors and of course Mark Sullivan, who's the author of most of the documents in there. I do want to also give a big thank you to our counsel, Jennifer Porter, and our legal assistant, Brittany Wilson. They keep us in line. It looks like my electricity went out here. They keep us going. They keep us on the right path, make sure we don't do things that maybe would be more appropriate for the Bar Association to do. I think that's real important. One comment I would make, I noticed from meeting with folks with military backgrounds, particularly some pilots we've had, these free-flowing discussions would occasionally have people talking over each other in these Zoom meetings. One of the things that I noticed several of them would do when they would finish their reports, they would say, over. So I thought that became a very efficient way not to trip over each other. So, Mr. President, over.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that, Lawyer Vickery. We next up is John Willardson with our Legislative Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish that I had more to report. I'll begin by saying a sincere thank you to Peter Bullock for his wonderful work on behalf of the State Bar with the legislature. And we also owe a pat on the back to Matt Smith, one of our counselors. This regards Senate Bill 414, which is near and dear to the heart of the North Carolina State Bar, because it deals with the increase allowed for annual fees for State Bar membership. Peter and Matt met with Senator Berger. Matt is from the same district of Senator Berger. The upshot is there is or has been no movement on that bill, and there won't be until sometime in the future. We had a glimmer of hope with regard to Senate Bill 217, which is to correct and align the numbering of the prosecutorial districts. Unfortunately, that bill did pass. Unfortunately, the bill that passed had nothing to do with renumbering or correcting the numbering of the prosecutorial districts, because that bill was gutted and what passed had nothing to do with that. The bill, House Bill 1067, dealing with modernizing debt settlement prohibition, passed in the House, but it stalled in the Senate. With regard to COVID-19 related legislation, I'm sure you are aware there is in effect emergency video notarization. That bill or that change was originally set to expire August the 1st. We understand it's been extended until March of 2021. There's also action that allows disbursement of funds prior to recordation of documents from Register of Deeds offices under certain circumstances. And finally, the remote or virtual administration of oaths to new attorneys who are being sworn in. There were no action items to report.
Okay, thank you, John. Thank you very much. We appreciate your work there in the keeping up with legislative matters. Thank you.
Yes.
Charles, we've got the Distinguished Service Award Committee.
Yes, Colin, thank you. And we do have a nominee for consideration of the council. So I would accordingly move that we go into closed session pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A2 to prevent the premature disclosure of an honorary degree, scholarship, prize, or similar award.
Thank you. We have a motion to go into closed session. Is there a second?
Second.
Moving second. Any discussion? If not, those in favor of going into closed session for the purposes stated, please vote yes, and those opposed, no.
And that's unanimous.
Thank you. All right.